Good morning, church. It's good to see everybody this morning. I realized I didn't do this first service, and I probably should have, although I don't know that lots of visitors show up at 8:30 to church. That's usually not a visitor thing. But if you're visiting with us this morning, my name's Brandon. I am not the pastor. I am a member here at Life Now, and Pastor Gary's on vacation this week. And so he asked me to speak for him this week, and I kind of feel like I need to pull back the curtain just a little bit, because last time I preached, we had like a sit down and he talked through like things I can improve on, different stuff, just pretty standard things. One of the things he said, I was in my notes too much. I was using my notes, my tablet and everything too much. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going up, I'm getting this thing in my mind, and I'm going to go up without notes, and I'm going to just use like scripture, like the stuff, there's a screen at the back that maybe you don't know, and I was like, I'm just going to read everything off the back. Got to dress rehearsal, that wasn't going to work because I can't see it back there anymore. And I used to, I also would make fun of Gary in my mind for turning his head and reading the screen, because I'm like, you don't do that, you face the audience, all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, now I get it. I'm old and I can't. I tell you that story to tell you this story is that I'm kind of getting old, and we're there, and so I'm going to take you back many years and many pounds ago as we're going to discuss my life. But first of all, I want to kind of acknowledge that I bet a lot of people sitting here today, if you're like me, you kind of had maybe this idea, this plan. You get ideas of what your life is going to look like, what you're going to do, how you're going to live, where it's going to go. You have your plans. You're going to walk this whole thing, and it doesn't turn out at all what you thought it would be. Anybody with me this morning, or am I the only one? Everybody there, you have this idea of what life is going to be, and you know exactly what you're going to do and how it's going to play out, and then it doesn't go at all like you planned. And I could tell you with certainty that that is the life that I'm going to describe to you, which is my own. So I'm going to take you back to 1999-ish, somewhere around in that period of time, about the time that Ashley, who was singing over here, the last time her pants were popular. You know what I'm talking about that time. Those big baggy jeans. About that time, I was a middle school kid at East Ridge Church, what used to be the East Campus, what used to be the Covenant Campus, which is now just church, whatever the names changed are. We were having a youth group. We used to have it in this little thing we called the cabin on the back side of the property. And I remember looking at my youth group, or my youth pastor, and I asked him, I said, Greg, do you think that I'd be a good youth pastor? This is a middle school kid. And he's like, I do think that. I think you'd be a phenomenal youth pastor. And that one conversation, and I tell you that because that was years ago, and I remember it even still to this day as I was planning this message, that's what kind of set in motion or put on me on a course of what I thought my life was going to look like. I didn't jump into it right there. I didn't say, okay, well, this is the moment. There was a seed that was planted, and so over the course of years and volunteering, Greg kind of cultivated that in me, and I walked year after year, grade after grade, went through high school until the summer of before my senior year of high school, the summer of 2004. I went to a conference called CIY Move, which the Life Now students are about to go to in just a couple weeks, actually. I went to CIY Move, and it was at that conference that I decided that I was going to go into full-time ministry, that I felt like God was calling me into full-time ministry. And so that set me then on the course. I went to Atlanta Christian College, got a biblical studies degree. I went to Mercer University Seminary, got a master's degree, and I was going to live and do and be in this life as a pastor. Even to the point where on our very first date, my lovely, beautiful wife, we got set up on a blind date, and we went to a Braves game. And I said, in theory, a Braves game is a really good first date, especially if you get set up on a blind date, because there's things going on. You don't have to carry the. It doesn't really work out though when there's a rain delay and it hits right when you pull into the parking lot and you're stuck in a car with one another having to figure out what to talk about. So we got real deep real fast. You know what I'm saying? And I looked at this woman, and I look back and I don't know why I got a second date. I really don't, because she was dressed to the nines. I mean, just dolled up, beautiful girl, and I'm this mop-headed 20-something-year-old, hair down to my ears. Don't really know if I washed it properly before the date. I worked at the time because there were no jobs available. I had to take a job as the sports director at the YMCA. I managed to gain weight while working at the YMCA as the sports director in my first year after college. So my t-shirt was too tight. I had shorts on that it didn't have a button. You know what I'm saying? I was using belts, or just kind of actually at that point I'd gotten so fat that they just kind of filled out. You know what I'm saying? I didn't need the button anymore. Too cheap to go buy shorts. And I had the audacity to look at this woman and tell her that if you want to date me, this is how life is going to go. You know what I'm talking about? So I said, I'm going to be in full-time ministry. I'm going to be at church. That's just kind of part of who I am. It's part of my life. It's going to be what's going to happen. I just was setting the tone early. Again, don't know why she went on a second date, because that was pretty audacious to throw out on a first date, a blind date at that, when you looked the way that I looked. But anyway, so that said, that's kind of, I tell you that story to tell you, like, this is how convinced I was of what my life was going to look like. I had these expectations that I was going to walk, I was going to get into a church, eventually you're going to speak, and I was a young kid. You just have the pictures of Andy Stanley jumping in your head. You know what I'm saying? You're going to speak to thousands. You're going to be baptizing people every hour. It's just going to be this great, huge, awesome moment. That's what I expected. Those were the expectations that I laid out before me. What I didn't expect was that my very, very first full-time church job, that there was going to be things that happened that brushed up against real, deep church hurt wounds in my wife's life. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect there to be 2 miscarriages at the beginning of our marriage that would cause a lot of emotional issues in our family. I didn't expect that those issues and other issues were going to lead to a battle of anxiety and depression within our house that was really, really hard and really, really difficult. I didn't expect that when we were finally blessed with our oldest son, Corbett, that would lead us to be going down to a one-income household. I really don't recommend that. I would recommend you plan it a lot better than we did when you have to go to a one-income household, but I didn't expect that, and that's where we ended up. And all those things led me to a moment of, because, working for the churches, there's not a whole lot in terms of health insurance and those other ancillary benefits. We're storing up treasures in heaven, but if you have a heart attack, you're on your own. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of the deal. And so, anyway, when my wife quit, we lost all of our benefits. We made it a little bit of time. I kind of reached a point where it was like, all right, something's got to change. Like this, life has happened, and things have to be different. And so, I ultimately ended up. I was on staff here at Life Now, and I talked to Gary, and it was like there's an opportunity that kind of fell into my lap that I felt like I needed to take. And so here we are 8 years later, and didn't meet my expectations. And so at the end of the day, I kind of I was excited for the new opportunity. I was excited to do something new, excited for the challenge. But if I was being honest, there was a lot of hurt inside of me, a little bit of brokenness from the standpoint of kind of feel like I failed. You know what I'm saying? Because you have this expectation for your life. You have these things that you think and the way it's going to play out, and you had it all planned and all mapped out, and then it doesn't go that way. And especially when you talk about somebody who is supposed to be serving the church, you're not supposed to be weak. You're supposed to just plow forward. It's supposed to just, save the world and tell people about Jesus, and you kind of feel like you're quitting on God, and that's kind of what I felt like. I was like, my parents invested in these degrees. My parents sent me to college. I said I was going to do all these things, and now I'm going to go design power lines. Not exactly at all what I thought. No, it's a cool job. It's a lot cooler than being a pastor, I'll tell you that. When I would tell people, when you used to ask, what do you do? Oh, I'm a pastor. Like, oh. And they immediately want to get out of the conversation as fast as possible. Now I tell them, hey, I work for an engineering firm. We design power lines. Oh, that's interesting. Sounds really important. It's not. Any one of you could walk into our office. I could probably train you to do it in 2 days, and you're like, he's an idiot. These people that design our lines are idiots. Can't believe it. But I did not expect that this is where I would be. Did not expect that this is where I would go. That my life looks nothing. If you had talked to me 20 years ago and what I thought it was going to be. And for me, that was hard. But see, when we frame our expectations properly and understand what they are, because I think what we have this tendency, and if you're sitting here today, maybe you're like me, you had an expectation, you had a thought, you thought I'm going to start here, and it's just going to be this steady, nice, easy climb to the top of where I want to be. And you probably have discovered, if you've lived in the world for any amount of time, that it's more like this. It's up and down, it's left, it's right. It's this winding journey, and sometimes you're left kind of holding the bag of man, what do I do now? This isn't what I wanted to do. This isn't where I thought I was going to go. God, where are you? And you maybe start to get angry. You start to get frustrated. Maybe you start, you had this expectation for your life, or you had expectations that other people placed upon you that you were supposed to do, that you were supposed to become, and you're like, I don't know what to do because this is not what I expected it to be. But see, the problem isn't the calling. The problem isn't where you want to go. The problem is that our expectations create an issue. They are a roadblock. And that's the whole kind of point of the message today, is that our expectations, they're a roadblock to God's destination. Proverbs 19:21, it says this: you can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. It's the old adage that tell God your plans and listen to him laugh. Like that's kind of what we do. We have this idea in our mind, and it doesn't come to fruition, and then you're kind of left holding the bag. Well, the good news is there's a story in Scripture that I think talks about and shows us and gives us a roadmap to what it is we do when our expectations don't meet what we thought, and our life doesn't turn out the way that we thought it would go. And so we're going to be in the book of Genesis. We're going to be hanging out and talking about Joseph. And so I'm just going to kind of briefly talk to you a little bit about Joseph before we kind of dive into the Scripture. Joseph is the oldest son of Jacob and Leah, Jacob and Rachel. Now, Jacob, whole big story. He fell in love with Rachel. His dad made him marry Leah first, and then he had to work again for Rachel. But Rachel was his favorite wife, and so Joseph was the firstborn son of his favorite wife. So Joseph became his favorite son. He was his most loved son, and everybody in the family knew it. It's not a good recipe for a healthy family dynamic. You know what I'm saying? When everybody knows who the favorite is, there usually creates some issues. And so Joseph was his father's favorite. Everybody knew it, created the sibling rivalry. You had a lot of issues. And Joseph was also this. He was a dreamer. He was a dreamer. He had visions. He dreamed big dreams, and he had these things, and he was able to interpret dreams. And so we're going to pick up the point in the story here where Joseph has had a dream, and he made some things because when we have expectations, some things kind of arise out of those expectations. And one thing that arises out of those expectations is assumptions. We make some assumptions when we feel like we have a plan and we have a direction that we're supposed to go. We make assumptions. And Joseph does that right here at the beginning of the story. So if you got a Bible, you can open up to Genesis chapter 37. We're just going to be kind of walking through the story of Joseph. But in verses 6 through 11, Joseph decides to share this dream with his brothers. He says, "Listen to this dream," he said. "We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine." His brothers responded, "So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon Joseph had another dream. And again, he told his brothers about it. "Listen, I have had another dream." He's like, "Listen, you listen to this. Like, this is crazy. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me." This time he told the dream to his father as well as to his brothers. But his father scolded him. "What kind of dream is that?" he asked. "Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow low to the ground before you?" But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what these dreams meant. So these guys already hate Joseph. Now imagine, even if you have a good relationship with your sibling, if they come to you and said, "I have this dream and you're going to bow down before me," you're like, get real. Get real. These guys already didn't like Joseph. And he has the audacity to come to them and say, "Listen, I had this dream." And what we do, we're not unlike Joseph, because when we have something that we feel like we're headed towards, when we have a plan for our life, we get excited about it. And then you go and tell the people that you're closest to, and sometimes that excitement's not met with the same way. They're like, "Okay, sure." You know, like you don't, like, we assume that everybody's going to just jump on board with it. We make assumptions that people are going to hear it, and they're going to just jump right in with us, and they're going to walk with us, and it's all going to just all progress in a nice, orderly fashion to where we're telling them that it's going. Life doesn't often work that way. And so we make these assumptions, and then at times, if you're like me, maybe you start holding God accountable for those assumptions. Like, it wasn't like God maybe said something, or maybe you feel a call to something, or maybe you had a vision or a dream for your life, and then it doesn't go that way because you made a whole bunch of assumptions the way that it was going to go along the way, and then it doesn't work out the way, and then sometimes you get angry. Sometimes you get bitter. Sometimes you take it out on maybe family that maybe they could see some of the roadblocks and the pitfalls before you, and they were kind of like, maybe tap the brakes just a little bit. We're not there yet. Maybe they were trying to help you along. And so we make these assumptions, and I promise you, like Joseph thought when he said that, he was like, "This is my family. Like, they're going to just be all excited for me. They're going to hear this, and they're going to think it's great." And they're like, "No." And so what it did was it made his brothers hate him to the point where they conspired and they found a way, like, we got to get rid of this guy. Like, we're done with him. We are done with him, and so we're going to get rid of him. So they conspired, and they threw him into a cistern, and now they're kind of like, "All right, well, now what?" Like, we kind of had the big emotional moment. They're mad at him. They throw him into a pit, into a well at the bottom. They're like, "All right, he's down there. Now what do we do?" Like, they don't know what to do. And like, they're like, "Well, we could kill him, or we could leave him for dead. I don't know that we want that on our conscience, but we could do that." They had just enough love for their brother to say, "Well, maybe we shouldn't kill him, but let's just sell him into slavery." some gypsies were coming down the road, and they said, we're going to sell him into slavery. We're going to sell him to these gypsies. And so that's what they do. They pulled him out of the well. They sold him to the gypsies, and then off they go, and they told his father they were dead. So Joseph is off and going. Now, you tell me if you think that if you got a dream from God where you see the stalks bowing down and you think it's your brothers and everybody's bowing down before you, you end up at the bottom of the well and sold into slavery. Is that meeting your assumptions of where you thought your life was going to go? Probably not. And so Joseph had a choice at that point in time. He could allow those assumptions to take him over, just like we can. We can allow those assumptions to distract us from the journey that God's got us on. Or you can embrace the fact, okay, maybe we're not there yet, but we're moving in a direction. We're going to figure it out. And that's what Joseph does. He just walks in faith. He continues to walk in faith because what happens is he ends up in the land of Egypt, the most powerful nation in the land at that time, the kind of center of that ancient world, the hub of all commerce, the hub of all things is Egypt. So he ends up in Egypt, and he actually ends up in the captain of the guard's house, a guy named Potiphar. And so Joseph is so good, and he's walking in faith, and he's doing what he's supposed to do, and doing what he's good at, and taking the things that are before him and doing well with it, that Potiphar puts him in charge of all of his house. Listen to this in chapter 39, verses 6 through 12. It says, so Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. Can you imagine that life? I just got to think about what kind of food I've got to eat. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have to figure out how to pay for it. I don't have to figure out how to cook it. I don't have to, I'm just going to sit back. What do I want to eat today? And it's going to happen. Like, that's the only care because Joseph was so good at what he did. And Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man. So I'm going to stop there for a second. So you got this moment now. So you can kind of see the story maybe taking shape just a little bit. If you're Joseph, you're in his shoes, like, okay, maybe this is what it was. I'm gaining this power. Like, Potiphar, trust me. I'm this guy's, like, right-hand man. I am in charge of his entire household. Maybe this is where God had me. And so you get a little power, you get a little success, and then you start getting temptations thrown your way. And that's what happens to Joseph here. So he was he was a well-built young man, things that have never been said about me. And Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. Come and sleep with me, she demanded. But Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. She kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. One day, however, no one else was around when he went in to do his work. She came and grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, come on, sleep with me. Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. So Joseph had an opportunity. He had a temptation here. And he could have justified it. Like there was a justification here. You know what? Nobody's probably going to know. If you don't know anything about the ancient world, the morals were a little bit different than our world today. In some ways, maybe the same, but in a lot of ways, a lot different. He could have said, I could probably get away with this. I could justify this. Nobody's going to know. Maybe even I kind of deserve this. Like, I've been through this ordeal with my family. I finally settled into a place. Maybe this is a good thing, and I could just camp out here for the rest of my life. And this is what God had in mind for me, was that I was just going to live this life. And if I cut a little corner here, if I make a little change here and just kind of, do just enough to get by, then we'll be all right. He could have given in to that temptation, but he didn't. He knew what God had called him to. He knew the life that he called him to, and he knew that this wasn't the end. And by doing this, he risks the moment that he has, but also it could take him out of God's favor. It could take him out of God's blessing. It could take him away from the path that God had laid out for him. And so he says no. But here's the thing. You ever done the right thing for the right reason and you still get hammered for it? It happens, right, in life. Like, an adage in our house, like I tell my son all the time, life's not fair. I'm like, that's a cuss word in our house. We don't say the word fair. Like, we don't worry about what's fair because life is often not fair. You can do the right thing for the right reasons and bad stuff still happen to you. And that's what happens to Joseph. So he runs away from Potiphar's wife. She's got his cloak in his hand. You can imagine, a pretty powerful woman doesn't like being turned down. And so she runs and she says, look, this guy came in here and he tried to take advantage of me. I have his cloak. I have the proof right here. Potiphar immediately throws Joseph into prison. He throws him into prison. Now, there's no jury of your peers in ancient Egypt. There's no moment of, like, you get thrown into prison, you're there until Pharaoh says, or some kind of events transpire to get you out. You don't get to go before a judge. You don't get to have a trial. You don't have a jury rule whether you're guilty or innocent. No lawyers, nothing. It's just, you're in jail. This powerful God threw you in jail. That's where you are until you're not. It's that simple. And so you can imagine now Joseph sitting in jail. Again, not on his bingo card for his life. Not what he was thinking when he had this dream and this vision that he was going to end up sitting in and rotting in an Egyptian prison, but that's where he found himself. Listen, there's going to be temptations. Maybe you do the right thing, maybe you do the wrong thing, but there's going to be things that get thrown your way, and it's going to continue to throw curveballs. How you respond to the aftermath is what's going to define your journey and whether or not you see your expectations as the end-all, be-all, the destination that you're headed to, what you wanted. If that's what it is, or if it's where God's leading you, that's going to be how you respond to these things. Because out of our expectations also is going to arise opportunities. If we continue in chapter 40, verses 12 through 15, Joseph is about to interpret a dream because he's sitting in jail, and he could have been wallowing, he could have been upset, he could have been frustrated, he could have just sat in the corner and like, this is where I'm going to die. Like, this is where the story of Joseph ends, is right here in this prison. But he didn't do that. It says, it tells us this little detail that the guards began to trust him, and I'm sure he started building relationships with other prisoners, and so then he's hearing stories, and he hears the chief cupbearer and the chief baker of Pharaoh. They had both been thrown in prison. They had displeased Pharaoh, so he threw him in jail, and so they both have dreams. And Joseph hears those dreams, and he's like, I can interpret this for you. I can tell you what this means. So he talks specifically to the chief cupbearer. This is what the dream means when he has a dream. He says, the 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as his chief cupbearer. And please remember me and do me a favor when these things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so that he might let me out of this place. For I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison, and I did nothing to deserve it. So Joseph didn't go off and lick his wounds and just like, this is my life. He served, he did what he was supposed to do, he gained trust, he gained influence, and then he sees this moment, this opportunity. He's like, please, like, I can tell you what this means, and it's a good news for you, but just all I ask is that you remember me when you get out of this place. Tell Pharaoh about me. Maybe he'll have compassion on me. Maybe he'll have grace on me. Maybe he'll get me out of here. And you know what happens? The guy forgets him. 2 years go by. Joseph is still in prison. Now again, if I'm Joseph, I'm mad at that point. I'm mad at everybody. I'm mad at the entire world. I'm mad at God. I'm mad at that guy. So if I ever get out of here and I see that guy, it's going down. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm done serving. I'm done doing anything because this is not what I expected it to be. I thought when I told this guy he would remember me. 2 whole years go by and he's still in prison. But then this moment happens. Pharaoh has a dream. Pharaoh has a dream. And it's a dream that he doesn't understand. It's a dream where he sees 7 cows, grazing, fat, healthy cows, grazing along the banks of the Nile River. And then 7 skinny, sickly-looking cows come and they swallow up the healthy cows, but yet they're still just as skinny as they were before they ate the cows. And he's like, I don't know what this means. So in Genesis 41, we hear this. The next morning, Pharaoh was very disturbed by the dream, so he called for all the magicians and the wise men of Egypt. When Pharaoh told them his dreams, not one of them could tell him what they meant. Finally, the king's chief cupbearer spoke up. Today I have been reminded of my failure, he told Pharaoh. Some time ago, you were angry with the chief baker and me. I didn't get the chief baker because it says here, and you imprisoned us in the palace of the captain of the guard. One night, the chief baker and I each had a dream. Each dream had its own meaning. There was a young Hebrew man with us in the prison who was a slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he told us what each of our dreams meant. And everything happened just as he predicted. I was restored to my position as chief cupbearer, and the chief baker was executed and impaled on a pole. Didn't work out for the chief baker. Chief cupbearer is feeling good. Chief baker, not so much. So Pharaoh hears this. He hears this, and he says, you got to bring this guy to me. See, nobody in Egypt can figure out what this means, why am I having this dream, and what does it mean? This guy does. Bring him out. So they finally get Joseph out of prison. They clean him up. They get him ready to present to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh tells him his dream. And now we've reached the point where we're getting into where God was leading Joseph all along. We reached the point because we get to the arrival. Because eventually, out of our expectations does arrive our arrival. We get to the destination that God has in mind for us. So Joseph tells him, Pharaoh, this means that there's, right now, the 7 healthy cows, they represent 7 good years, 7 years of plenty, 7 years of harvest. You're going to have so much food in the land of Egypt. It's going to be abundant. But after that 7 years, there's going to be 7 years of famine. And so he makes a suggestion to Pharaoh. He said, if it pleases Pharaoh, he should take these 7 years, store up as much grain as possible, store up as much food as possible so that you're ready for the 7 years of famine. And then all around Egypt, people are going to come. You're going to have all the food. You're going to have all the things that you need. And you're going to be able to grow your kingdom because people are going to need what you have. And so Pharaoh, in Genesis 41, 37 through 41, he says, Joseph's suggestions were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, can we find anyone else like this man, so obviously filled with the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent or wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. So this guy, this Hebrew, this who was abandoned by his family, who was sold into slavery, who was unjustly accused, who sat for an indefinite prison sentence for a crime he did not commit. This guy who went through all the stuff that I promise you, he had no expectation of these things. This was not the plan that he had for his life. He did not want or believe that any of this stuff was going to happen. Finds himself second in command, ruler over the entire land of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh, the most powerful leader on the face of the earth. And then we get to this moment. Because it happens just like Joseph said, and the whole land around Egypt, everybody's starving. Nobody has food. Which is a detail that we take for granted, isn't it? Like, we can't fathom the idea. Like, you ever been outside and you're hot? Like, I've been thinking this lately because I've been having to be outside in the hot a lot here lately. And I'm looking at farmland because I'm walking along the power lines next to fields, and I'm like, and there used to be a time where you didn't have rain, you didn't have food. We figured out how to get water to the food, to the farmland now. We don't have those issues that we used to have. This is a big deal. They didn't have food. And so Joseph's family, eventually, they get to the point where there's nothing to eat here. We've got to go to Egypt. They have food in Egypt. We've got to go to Egypt. And now Joseph finally gets to the moment that he dreamed about all those years in Genesis 42:6. It says, since Joseph was governor of all Egypt and in charge of selling grain to all the people, it was to him that his brothers came. And when they arrived, they bowed before him with their faces to the ground. Now imagine that moment for Joseph just a second. Like, imagine that you're Joseph. And you didn't know what this life was about. You didn't know where you were headed. You had all this expectation, and it's been this wild turn. But then you have the moment that you dreamed about as a kid. I mean, you're talking 20-something years have gone by. All this time where you first had this dream, all these big moments have happened in your life. And then you get to the moment that God had laid before you. God, I don't know what that must feel like. And so what happens is Joseph, they don't recognize Joseph at this point. They think that they probably do think at this point he's died, he's gone, like we sold him into slavery, and they've had this guilt on their backs all this time. So Joseph sends them away, and he says, bring back your brother Benjamin, and so which is his younger brother, and he ends up bringing all of his family. Eventually, he makes himself known to his brothers, and he weeps because when he sees Benjamin, he can't take it anymore, and he falls apart. And he says, brothers, it's me, it's your brother Joseph. And so they all come together. They all end up living in the land of Egypt. And then we get to the part of the story because eventually they all live there, they grow, and they multiply, and everything. Joseph continues to run Egypt to the side of Pharaoh. And eventually, though, his father dies. Jacob dies in Egypt. And the brothers think, this is it. Like, Dad's, like, this society, like, Dad kind of rules the roost. Dad's gone. Joseph's about to get it. It's like on now. You know what I'm saying? That's what they're thinking in their mind. He is going to take us out for what we did to him. And so they come to him and like, just make us your slaves. Like, we'll do whatever you say. Just don't kill us. And Joseph has this perspective. It says, but Joseph replied, don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you? You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. Listen, expectations are a roadblock to God's destination. They're not the destination itself. How many of you have ever been through a roadblock? We've been through them, right? If you've driven in time, you've been through a roadblock. I think we all kind of fit into a few different categories. Some of you, who's the nervous Nelly that a minute you see the roadblock, you know you haven't done anything wrong, but you immediately start to get panicked, right? Little anxiety comes up, you start patting, and my seatbelt buckled, where's my wallet, where's my key? Like I haven't done anything wrong. Like do I have any outstanding warrants, even though I've never been arrested, never done anything wrong in my life? I'm that anxious. Like, anybody that person? You just get that anxious? Like, you see the cop, it's all like, I haven't done anything wrong, but something bad's going to happen. Like, I think that's the way we are sometimes with our expectations, right? Like, it doesn't go the way we thought. We get this roadblock put in front of us, and we're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I'm so anxious. I'm so nervous. And you just kind of collapse in like a dying star on yourself. Like, some of us fit into that category. The expectations that we have, when they're not met, it makes us so anxious. And so even though we haven't done anything wrong, even though we're just walking along, we don't know what to do with it. Now, some of you might be like me. How many of you are the U-turn guy? The U-turn person, right? Like, I get to a roadblock and I'm immediately irritated. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to find my own way around this roadblock. I'm going to get past it. I'm going to get around it by God, and I'll leave God in the dust if I got to do it. You know what I'm saying? Some of us are that person. Like, we get this roadblock put in front of us, and we start to try to make our own way. We start to try to grab at the control of it. We start to try to move ourselves around and say, I'm going to find my way. Took me 3 hours to get home that tornado. Y'all remember a few years ago when the tornado hit? We have an office in Covington. It usually takes me 25 minutes to get home. I got home 3 hours later. I probably could have gotten home sooner if I just would have stayed on 36 and let the traffic direct me. You know what I'm saying? But I had to find my own way. And then some of you, and I'm not going to, please don't raise your hand for this one. Just keep this one between you and the Lord. You know what I'm saying? Some of you, the roadblocks for you, right? Some of us, we get to a roadblock, we get to this thing, and you're like, this is my moment. This is, like, I'm busted, and this is it. Like, this was meant for me, and it's about to go down, and it's about to be bad, but it's where I needed to go. And sometimes we fight that. So, see, us and the U-turn, like me, the U-turn guy, and you, this roadblock's for me, we're kind of the same person. We spin around, and sometimes we end up in the same place with the cops chasing us down. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're running behind you because you spin around in the middle of the road. Somebody's going to come after you. That's kind of maybe what the roadblock is meant to be for you, though. That the expectations that you didn't meet, the stuff, it's meant to stop you and say, stop right here and just wait, because you're going to pass through it. You're going to get beyond it if you just trust and let the whole process work out. And so I don't know where you are today. I don't know what you brought in. Maybe you brought in expectations that you yourself have put on you. Maybe you had this plan for your life. Maybe you knew what it was, and it is the weight of the fact that it hasn't gone that way is crushing you. Maybe you've had a parent or a friend or a spouse. Listen, the quickest way to wreck a marriage is to put expectations, uncommunicated expectations on your spouse and then expect them to live up to it. That's the kind of stuff can be crushing to a marriage. It can be crushing to your spirit. It can be crushing to your heart. Maybe you have never lived up to expectations that were set for you from a very young age, and you don't know what to do with that. But I'm going to tell you what you can do. Listen, go to God with it. Go to God. Listen, He understands that. He understands the struggles. He understands the problems that come with unmet expectations, and He knows the journey that He's taken you on. He's not surprised by any of it. Go to Him with it. Release the expectations. Don't release the calling. If you feel that God's leading you in a direction, don't release that. Don't let go of that. Just let go of what you think it's supposed to look like. Go to God with it. Get in community. Get around people that can help you. Listen, when I go through things, I always try to do three things with people that are believers. I try to go to someone who's older, wiser, and been there before, and I talk to them, and I get their advice, and I share with them. Then I try to go to somebody that's where I'm at, that's on my level, that's like a peer, and I try to talk to that person, and I try to go through and I get their perspective. And then oftentimes I'll even go to someone who's behind me, who's coming up beyond me. I'll share the story with them, hoping that that they'll learn from it, but they also might have perspective that I don't have. I try to bring those three type of people into my life and listen to them and take the wisdom from it and learn from it. Be in community. That's one of the core tenets here, is that getting in community, being a part of groups, being a part of ministry teams, serving here, being around the community of believers, and grounding yourself in the church. And that's the last thing. Ground yourself in the church. Because listen, I had expectations for my life, and I expected to be a full-time vocational pastor until God quit giving me breath. That's not what I am today. And it didn't meet my expectations, and I did struggle with that for a time. But now, as I sit back and look 8 years later down the road here, I got a really cool job that I really enjoy. I've gotten to work with people who were actually in my youth group who now work at this company, and I've gotten to continue on dealing with them, and now they're friends, and they're co-workers, they're peers, and we've encouraged one another, and I've got to help some of them professionally, and it's been really, really a blessing that I didn't see coming. I've gotten to serve in churches and go do things that I wouldn't have if I was tied to one body in one place. That I've gotten to go and help smaller churches that wouldn't normally have the ability to bring somebody in like me. I've gotten to go do that. I've gotten to lead worship. I've gotten to do all kinds of crazy cool stuff to help the body of Christ that if I was tied to one location, I wouldn't have been able to do. God knew what he was doing. And so I've let go. I'm like, I don't need it to look a certain way anymore. I don't have any expectations other than I'm going to follow the Lord. I'm going to do what he calls me to do. I'm going to try to live the best life that I know how to live to the glory of Jesus Christ. And then whatever comes may come. In 5 years, I don't know, maybe I'm standing on a stage as a pastor again. Maybe I'm continuing to do what I'm doing. I don't know what it'll look like. But I know that my expectations weren't the destination. They were just a roadblock along the way. And we can choose how that roadblock directs our lives. So if you're here today, listen, you got your Connect card there. Listen, if you got an expectation that's been weighing on you, listen, we want to know about that. We want to pray for you. If you feel the need, we're going to sing a song here in a minute, and you feel the need, like you got to lay that expectation down. Listen, the altar's open. You can do that. If you need somebody to talk to, if you need to get in community, there's groups, there's things that you can go to, from small groups on Wednesday night to Celebrate Recovery Ministries on Thursday. There are places that you can go where you can deal with these expectations and deal with the pressure of them and figure out how to step forward and get beyond the roadblock towards the destination that God's got for you. But use this moment now to figure out, what is God calling you to do? What expectations are you putting yourself? What expectations are you holding on from other people? And let's throw those to the side and walk further, one step closer to the destination that God has for us. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you that you're a God of grace, that you're a God of mercy, that you're a God of love, that you are a God who desires to direct our steps. That you are a God who cares for us personally, that you want to see us do things that make a difference in the kingdom. And so, Lord, I ask that we have the strength and the ability to, and the discernment to see through what it is are your expectations and the things that you're calling us to and the things that we've put upon ourselves. Help us to see the difference between these two. Help us to lay down the expectations. Help us to lay down our assumptions. Help us to turn away from our temptations. Help us to look and see and be present in the opportunities that you've laid out before us so that we can arrive at the destination that you always had in mind for us, no matter what turns and twists and hills that life has put in our way. Encourage us, Lord, in your word. Give us the ability, the type of faith that Joseph had to walk every step with courage and conviction and with an understanding that each roadblock along the way was not meant to stop us, but meant to direct us towards where you had us to go, Lord. We love you and we thank you. It's in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.